Good morning. Anne Lamott is one of my favorite writers, if you're not familiar with her. She has quite a story to tell. She's very prolific. And her background started from a struggling addiction, single motherhood, and from that, writing became her salvation. And she's one of the great American literary voices. And I refer to her books a lot because her examples are so spot on. And there was one in particular where she was talking about a friend of hers who had major dental surgery. Any of you ever had major dental surgery? And so this friend of hers went home with all of the requisite drugs and was fine and was talking to people and saying, actually, it wasn't that big of a deal. And then the drugs started to wear off. And she kept going back to the bottle and would pacify the pain for a little bit until she turned the bottle over and there were no more pills. So she immediately called the nurse practitioner at her dental office and said, "This just will not do. You didn't give me enough. I would like more." To which the nurse practitioner said, "No." And she said, "What?" And this indignation ignited inside of her, and she began to say very colorful language towards the nurse practitioner, thinking that that would do the trick and she would get that refill. And the nurse practitioner said, "No, what I need you to do is to go buy some gum and chew gum." Now imagine if you're in pain in this particular area and a nurse would tell you to go buy some gum and to chew gum. And she thought that that was the most out of integrity, worst advice that could be given to her. And for whatever reason, she succumbed to that because she wasn't going to get the drugs. And she began to chew the gum. And what she discovered was that the nurse practitioner was right. That when there is a particular pain, physical pain in the body, everything that surrounds that then becomes overprotective of that pain. And it creates sort of this insular pocket in order to prevent anything, any obstruction, any air, any liquid, anything from promoting that pain. So it's as if everything else within our systems kind of goes in and puts this protective cover. And the nurse was trying to get her to see that if she didn't exercise that pain and allow the muscles and the normalcy of her jaw movement to return back to that, she would succumb into a greater degree of affliction than if she had allowed it to be worked out. Does that make sense? And so that by chewing the gum, she would start to work the muscle around the pain, which would then actually expedite the healing. And so I always loved that story until it happened to me. So a couple of weeks ago, I go to New York City. Sometimes I'll speak at Unity of New York, which is on the Upper West Side in Symphony Space. But one of the things that I've been really blessed about being in New York City is cultivating a spiritual therapy practice. And so I rent a little room in St. Michael's up on 99th and Broadway. And I have my little room, and I never have enough time for all of the people that sign up, which is a wonderful problem. And that doesn't happen in any other city in the United States. New York, just who's your therapist? It's like everybody's got to have one. So it's like second nature to people. And I love the work, quite frankly. And I have a tendency sometimes, because the list gets so long, that I skip lunch. And I will start at 9 o'clock and I will usually end at 7 p.m. And so I stay up in Battery Park, which means that I have to catch the subway at the Oculus, you know, where World Trade Center is. I walk through the Oculus, I take all the subway, the one line, all the way up to the Upper West Side, lets me out, I get my coffee, my breakfast, and then I settle in for the clients that continue to come in. So day one, I'm used to that routine. My body is used to that routine, and I'm thinking I'm doing okay. And it's a lot. People have a lot. People have a lot going on. I don't know if you knew that or not, but there's a lot of stuff happening in our world. And when we only have certain percentages of skill sets with how to navigate our way through this tumultuous time, then it wreaks havoc. It wreaks emotional havoc and spiritual havoc and physical havoc. And so I'm listening to all of this, and I'm reminded that I have to become better at, someone's told me that I'm highly empathic. And so I have to become better at assimilating the work that I do, because a lot of times what will happen is I will physically take on much of what it is that I'm working with. Day 2, I get up. I usually had to get up at about 6 in order to get ready to make sure, get on the train on time, walk through the Oculus, because it's a jaunt. It's not like getting in the car. And as I'm walking through the Oculus, I don't know if you know what the Oculus is, if you haven't been to New York since they built the Freedom Tower. So the Oculus is where the World Trade Center used to be. And it's this beautiful, beautiful underground porcelain white, long extended thing that now has shops and a subway system. And it's very reverently done, and they have pieces of the old World Trade Center embedded into or simulated by sculptures all around this particular area, and it's called the Oculus. And it has become the main artery for all of the subway systems and the PATH trains from people who are coming from New Jersey and other points. And as I'm walking through these long corridors, on the second day, as I'm going to do my work, all of a sudden, I'm thunderstruck by sadness. Almost as if my feet became like lead. And as I began to look at the faces of people, all that I could see was just this external sorrow. And it was as if I was having some kind of out-of-body experience, because it was just so profound. And I had to force myself to keep walking and get my subway ticket and sit, and then there I am on the train. And if you've ever commuted in New York City in the morning on a train, you know that a subway car that's maybe supposed to hold 60 holds 160. And so here we all are crowded in there, and I'm suffocating. And when I get out, I go to my office and I splash water on my face, and I go about and I do what I need to do, and I do a second round. And I'm thinking about this when that last client is over with and I'm preparing to go back. I'm thinking about, wow, David, what do you need to do? What do you need to do to cleanse? And I'm not in my home space. I'm staying with friends. And I thought I'll be okay till I get home. Well, Wednesday morning, the morning I'm flying home, I woke up with a raging fever. And it's always fun to pack and go to the airport with a raging fever. So I packed and I got to the airport, and I think I flew. I don't remember. Somehow I got to Atlanta. Somehow I ordered a lift. And by the time I got home, I was pretty sick. And I'm not one of those people that likes to go to the emergency room or call the doctor. It's like, yeah, I'm going to work it out. And I looked at Ty and I said, I can't work this one out. So he took me to urgent care, and it appeared as though my body had gone into sepsis. And so I had about 6 or 7 infections at once within my bloodstream, and they took me to the hospital, which is so much fun. And poking and prodding and whatnot, and telling me that I'm going to be on a series of antibiotics for quite a while in order to clear this infection out. And on top of that was this just mellifluous cough, the cough of the ages that would not go away, the cough that kept the entire 6th floor of Northside Hospital awake as it just went on and on and on, and there was nothing that they could give me that could alleviate that. So I tell you all of that only because I'm better. Still got a port in my arm. But this nurse practitioner comes to my house, the nerve to come to my house, and shows me everything. So the port's here in my arm, and shows me I've got to continue to take these antibiotics for quite a bit in order to assure that all the infection is out of my body. And you know, it's like learning Greek, right? She says, this is what you do, and this is what you do, and this is what you do, and you take this cap, and you tear this off, and you do this, and then you have to swab this, and then you have to sterilize this, and you have to put this in, then you have to click this, and then you have to flick it with your finger, and then you got to make sure that it all comes in, and then you can't do this, because if you do that, then you're going to have to start over, and I'm like, and Ty's like, and so I said, and you're coming back tomorrow, right? And she said, no. She goes, you got it. And like Anne Lamott's friend, I was like, that bitch. I don't know what they pay you, but I want some of it. And so I reached out and I called, and Scheherazade was kind enough to come over the next morning, and her and her son came over because he did that in the Army, so I felt really special. And they helped the second day, but do you know, the third day, by the time I was doing that, I was like, I got this. And I began to do it, and I began to clean the line with the saline and put the antibiotic bag in and put the heparin in and do all of that kind of stuff, to the point where now it's like second nature. It's like, hey, if you need me to come over, I can do it for you. So I have a new skill. But the point of that is that there's this moment when you feel as though you can't do something. There's this moment, like the woman with the dental surgery, where you feel as though this is a permanent thing that I don't know if I will ever be able to rise above or to transcend. This is a vulnerability that I don't know what's going to happen. And there's some anger with that. There's some frustration with that. There's a lot of fear around that when you look at one's schedule and you see obligations and you see some of the things that you're having to miss that you're obligated to financially to take care of. And so all kinds of things are swirling in there. But it's as if all the elements of the universe go, stop, and surrender. Surrender. I do have to tell you that the book for this month is an extraordinary book. Whatever arises, love that. Don't you just hate that title? Whatever arises, love that. Whatever arises in our governmental system, love that. Whatever arises within our own physical state of being, find a way to love that. And what he's really talking about, the author's name is Matt Kahn, and by the way, if you want, go to YouTube. He has over 11 million followers on YouTube. Quite a story. But he talked about the fact that as you move, and as we all move into this place of learning how to do that, that surrender is a requirement. So I feel as though I like signed up to be a guinea pig or something for this particular month's theme. Whatever arises, love that. But part of my mantra, part of my personal prayer, part of my intention has always been, I'm available. If you've heard me teach, if you've heard me speak before, you've heard me say that many, many times. And I'm very sincere about that. And my sincerity grows because my experience with saying I'm available continues to grow. And I trust. I have a very deep, abiding trust in what we call the universe. And when I say that I'm available to the universe, it flips me around. It throws me into a blender sometimes. It takes me all over the place. And in my kicking and screaming down the path of transformation, I always come up to the perfect spot of where it is that I'm supposed to be. And so there was an awareness one night in the hospital. I said, nope, this is exactly where I need to be. I don't understand it right now, but this is where I need to be. This is where I need to be, because I'm at the precipice of a new level of surrender. The author Matt Kahn, who wrote Whatever Arises, Love That, says that surrender is the singular most important thing for you and I to begin to disassociate from what he calls the ego. The ego is that thing that tells you and I that we are separate. The ego is the thing that flared up for all of us yesterday when we heard the news. The ego is the thing that tells us that there is no solution. The ego is the thing that tells us that we are locked in place into some kind of labeling and that we are helpless in our present-day situation. That's the ego. But when we surrender, we are not being weak. What we are doing is we are surrendering an identity to that so that what? Something more powerful, something more magnanimous, something far beyond the wounding, something that requires us to chew away at the pain in order to regain and reassociate ourselves with the strength and the spiritual muscularity and the truth of why it is that we are here. I'm sorry if that sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo, but what I'm really trying to get at is that we're already equipped. But if we keep protecting things rather than chewing away at the discomfort, if we keep trying to protect what was rather than moving in there and surrendering to what wants to be, then we will never fully be free of that which is the ego. So in the book he said, let me help you surrender. In the very beginning he says, let me help you surrender. And he goes, these statements are going to sound very foreign, perhaps very uncomfortable, but at the same time they're probably going to bring up a lot of emotion for you as well. He says, repeat some of these, and you don't have to do this morning, but I'm going to give you a sample. I don't know how to love the sadness that I feel. I don't know how to love the fear that I sense. I don't know how to love the jealousy that I notice. I don't know how to love the pain that I'm in. I don't know how to love the judgments I have. I don't know how to love the struggles I face. I don't know how to love the past that I remember. I don't know how to love the people who hurt me. I don't know how to love those who have ignored me. I don't know how to love those who punished me. I don't know how to love those who abused me. I don't know how to love the resistance that I feel. I don't know how to love the doubt that I sense. I don't know how to love the darkness that is within me. And many, many more of these statements. They're statements of surrender. Hear me. They are not statements of weakness. They are statements of surrender. And he says that by acknowledging that I don't know how to love, that something exquisite happens in that moment. And you and I relinquish each conflict, each burden, each hardship by entering into the heart of surrender. Can you entertain that idea? Rather than sometimes being caught up in the mechanics of affirming, we bypass the necessity to surrender. And in the necessity to surrender, we are saying that I, in my current human state, do not know this. I don't know how to love those who are persecuting me. And there's something very powerful about being able to articulate that. He says it might seem counterintuitive to confess the depths of what you don't know or what you don't know how to do, and yet in your body there is a profound amount of spaciousness, relaxation, and relief as a result of each confession. As you accept what you don't know, the universe within you, hear me, the universe within you that does know and does it all is once then called into action. In response to such mantras, the universe resolves through you what only the grace of your honesty can ever set you free. Did you hear the word honesty? That when you and I are able to be honest, that is the thing that begins to chip away and begins to dismantle this thing called the ego. We sit next to one another in this room, and we might be very trepidatious in order to talk about our pains or our ills or our woes because it doesn't sound very spiritual. Many of us do have some of the similar struggles that we've had for years, and part of that is because we've lacked a curiosity and a surrender to be able to say, I don't know how to do this, because we've been too busy maintaining some kind of status quo, rather than letting the structural part of us dissolve and crumble. And my aim as being your spiritual leader these 8 years has always been to find ways, entry points, to be able to liberate ourselves from that ego and to liberate ourselves from that pain, so that each of us in our own way and in our own fashion can begin to experience a greater degree of self-reliance. That nurse that said, no, I'm not coming back tomorrow, knew exactly what she was doing. What she was saying was, here's your portal, here's your pathway to a new skill, to a new set of self-reliance. That nurse practitioner that refused to give that woman medication for her dental problems knew exactly what she was doing, because she was providing this person an opportunity to be able to understand within her that there was a capability and a power of self-healing that she hadn't tapped into yet. And so this year's theme has been about living affirmatively. This has been a pilot program, a vision of mine. What is a vision? What is a visionary? I had a colleague once said, I am so sick of people who call themselves visionaries. I went, And I don't call myself that. I try to be that. Because a visionary, and all of us are visionaries in degrees, but a visionary is someone who sees a mental idea, a vision, and begins to formulate and make choices in the physical world in order to match and be in alignment with that vision. And working the way in which I've worked all of these years in Centers for Spiritual Living, and coming up on 20 years as a licensed minister, been in 10 years long before that, so you're looking at 30 years of all of this, and beginning to see cycles, and beginning to see rhythms, and beginning to see ebbs and flows, and beginning to see things that are not moving along as maybe an organization would want. Being a part of think tanks that say, what do we do about all of this? Which promotes my visionary thinking, right? And when things come to me, sometimes I want to explore them. And it's been a real honor to be able to for you to allow us to explore a vision of a spiritual council this year. In January, we started out with metamorphosis, because that was exactly what it was that we were doing as a community. We were going to move and embark into a metamorphosis of changing the way in which we looked at things. Part of the vision for me was a disruption of one singular voice, the old sage on the stage mentality, and to begin to bring different viewpoints and different entry points, some of which you might not like, some of some which might be the equivalent of that nurse practitioner that you're like, I don't like what they have to say. And yet what it is that they're trying to say is enough of an irritant in order to hopefully get you to think in a different way. And so we went through metamorphosis into spiritual essentials, into adventures into thinking. And April was magnificent because we moved into conjuring justice. And we as a community began to decide how much do we want to show up in the world in terms of our spiritual and our social activism in order to bring these things into alignment. We explored the power of the inherent you, the power of conversation, awakening the global heart. In August, we explored what it would be like to work with a physical mandala in order to create that as a part of our spiritual practice. And last month was moving into the idea of consideration, considering new ideas. All of these things were in alignment with a structure and a path in order to get us into a place of a deeper embodiment. Different voices, different opportunities. Some of the proudest moments of that vision that I saw come to life would be in Q&As. Sometimes upwards of 60 to 80 people would hang out over here. And I wish all of you could have heard some of the questions and the conversations, because they were rich and they were deep and they were sad and they were vulnerable. And there were people just like you sitting where you are sitting now who wanted a place and an opportunity to be able to express. Dr. Will told us so much about the Imago Dei, which is the image of God. And in his own inimitable fashion and in his own biblical narrative and his way, he often would remind us of the fact that no matter what takes place in the land of the political arena or in the land of the effect, that nothing can separate you and I from being that image of God. And Cynthia James, God love her, she won't mind me telling you this. She just celebrated her 70th birthday last week. Told us relentlessly about the responsibility of self-care and how that pathway of self-care, congruence with our spirituality, is the thing that will rise up and sustain us as we learn to love ourselves. And David Alexander shared so beautifully his passion for social and spiritual justice, and Reverend Annette reminded us that we must learn to love justice more than injustice. And Mona Shai Joshi kept grounding us over and over and over again with the essential truth that anything other than quiet meditation is just a shallow, quick fix. And as we began to look at all of that, we realized that oftentimes those visions aren't necessarily ready or congruent with where you might be. And so there was a lot of struggle this year. There was a lot of struggle financially. There was struggle in attendance. There was struggle with the model. And I realized that, and I realized that change a lot of times is challenging for people. A couple of weeks ago, I was at Renaissance Unity in Detroit, which used to be called Church of Today, which was Jack Boland's old church. And Jack was quite the celebrity in the Unity movement. And that church is a monolith that used to seat upwards of 2,500 people. Right now they have about maybe 475 that come. They don't have a senior minister. They have a CEO that runs Renaissance Unity. And I had many, many conversations and meetings with their board and with him about this particular model. And he said, this is really what we want to do, because personality is the thing that has gotten in the way for them. And I said, I don't know if personality is the thing that's gotten in the way for us, but I think that there's something beyond personality And that's the pursuit, and that is the thing that we've aimed for. But I realize that models don't necessarily fit appropriately in all structures. Detroit is very much going to lean into this model in the coming year as they try to sell their building. Everybody's trying to sell their building. Seattle just sold their building. Agape just sold their building. Everybody's selling their building. And as we begin to look at this trend and to ask ourselves, what will we be? What will be 21st century spirituality? There is no definitive answer. But I'm very proud of the fact that at least here in Atlanta, we were the first people to try. I was asked to keynote at the Unity Convention in Kansas City with Bishop Carlton Pearson. And so Carlton and I stood up together, and as we prepared what it was that we were going to say, he just looked at me and he said, "You're one old courageous fool, aren't you?" I said, "That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me." But I was able to stand in front of the entire Unity movement and to talk about this model. And people waited for 2 hours in line. Ministers waited in 2 hours in line in Kansas City to tell me about the struggles and the problems. And so I'm proud of the fact that we went out on the skinny branches. But it's one thing to go out on the skinny branches, and it's another thing to economically not be able to support what it is that we're doing. And that's why today we are coming together in order to share with you where we are and to bring about and to talk about solution. And in my surrender of this, the surrender of the idea, there is no set in stone what might be next for 2019 in terms of the format of what this looks like. But what I've come to realize for myself in my own surrendering, it is that it's time for me to step down from being with you at SLCA, and that the end of December will be my last Sunday. And so you have me all of December and a couple of weeks in November, and I'll be with Mona next week. But I think in order to create the spaciousness for what this community needs, whether it's a version of this or not, or whether it's going back to a senior model, that currently my positioning and my vision and what it is that I'm striving for might be standing in the way. And so I want my ego to be able to step aside and to be able to allow that to happen with ease and with grace. And I thank you so much for the privilege to serve you. This isn't the final day. Again, you will have me all the way through the rest of the year. And there are many things to say and many things to share. But I do want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving this little boy here the opportunity to explore a vision. And like I said, there were brilliant moments. And there are more brilliant moments that can happen between now and the end of 2018. And they were irreplaceable, brilliant moments. There were moments when people got on stage. There were moments when people talked with one another. There were moments in Q&A that were so profound. One woman who unfortunately had to move to Arizona said, "This Q&A format saved my life. I have never been to a church anywhere where I could speak from my heart and find some tangible relief rather than in sitting in stoicism and in quiet for fear of what others might think." And it was that Q&A format that gave me the permission to do that. And if there's nothing else that arises, you know, the lotus from the mud, that was enough. That was enough to know that in this space and in our intention, we provided that for someone. My guess is that there are many more people who have had the same profound healing as well. Much has gone into this model. Much has gone into this model. David Aurelio will always be your unsung hero. It doesn't matter how many times we acknowledge him. I've never seen anyone so selflessly serve in a position the way that he has served. And he and I do not get along 100% of the time. He's kind of like me calling and saying, I want drugs, and he says, no, go chew some gum. But it's been one of the most incredible yin-yang relationships. And there are things that you will never know. There are dark, long hours of work that you will have never seen. And I feel so richly blessed to have had the opportunity to have him as an executive director. There are less than 3 CSLs now across the world that have an executive director. And so to have had him in this position, to have watched him spearhead, to have allowed him to give me the breadth to explore my vision and to help me manage it has been a work luxury that I will always cherish. And for you to allow me to lead and to love in the way that I have is also quite special. And so at this time, I'm going to stop talking, and I am going to invite Mike Helvey up. Mike serves on our board. Hi, I'm David Ault, and I simply want to say thanks. Thanks for taking the time to watch our broadcast here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. We have a vision, and that vision is to reawaken all to their spiritual magnificence. And one of the ways that we are able to do that is through this very medium of broadcasting. So if you got anything out of this, if you felt in any way inspired, or if something spoke to you directly, then I extend an invitation to you to become a part of our family by donating. And there are many ways in order for you to be able to do that. One is to simply go to our website at slca.com, and there you will find all different kinds of prompts that will help you support what it is that we are doing here in Atlanta. One way is to become a pledger. That means that you decide on a monthly basis that you are going to help us with this vision. Another way is to donate through our management system called Fellowship One, another through PayPal, and another even easier way is on your cell phone. You can do what's called text to tithe, and that number is 404-796-7030. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I invite you to come back weekly to see what it is that we're up to. Blessings.